The gentleman from Henrico, Mr. Massie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege, please.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, exactly 1 week ago today, I gave a floor speech on how dismally slow economic growth has been in the country over the past 8 years of the Obama administration, and how dismally slow Virginia's economic growth has been over the last 3 years under the tutelage of Mr. McAuliffe and Mr. Northam. Not to mention, Mr. Speaker, as economic growth has been so slow, but the worst performance ever by JLARC is the performance of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, again under the supervision of Messrs. McAuliffe and Northam. And Mr. Speaker, this dismally slow economic growth has put and is putting a big hurt on many Virginians and their families. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, my speech touched a little nerve on the other side in the Democratic caucus and with their allies, given the responding speeches I received from my great friends, Delegate Toscano and Delegate Lopez. To recap the debate quickly, Mr. Speaker, the U.S. economy, measured by gross domestic product, which is the broadest and deepest measure of economic growth, has not grown at a rate of 3% or better for the past 11 years. The last time this happened, Mr. Speaker, was never. It only happened for 4 years during the Great Depression. And then with respect to Virginia, Mr. Speaker, the Virginia economy only grew at 2% in 2015, the last year we have data for, and for the prior 4 years grew at less than 1% each year. For the first time since the Second World War, Virginia's economy is growing slower than the very slow growth U.S. economy. Again, Mr. Speaker, as a result of this, many Virginians are hurting, and we are facing a $1.2 billion revenue shortfall. My good friends Delegates Toscano and Lopez responses were to pick some small subsets of data of GDP that have shown some small growth, although still very slow, to rebut the big GDP picture, dismally slow economic growth in the country and in Virginia. Mr. Speaker, this selective small data happy talk does not change the big picture reality of dismally slow economic growth in the country and in Virginia. Just ask Hillary Clinton. But, Mr. Speaker, the far more important response to this dismal U.S. and economic slow growth are the responses we have received from millions of voters in the country and in Virginia over the past 8 Obama years. Mr. Speaker, many of you have heard me refer to Mr. Market before when it comes to business issues. Well, we also have a Mr. Market when it comes to political issues called elections. And with respect to the great public policy debate of the day, and there has been and there will be no more important public policy issue debate than economic growth. So, Mr. Speaker, let's take a quick look at how millions of our countrymen and fellow Virginians, Mr. Political Market, have voted over the past 8 years after actually experiencing, living in this U.S. slow growth economy and Virginia's slow growth economy, and after hearing the debate ad nauseum nationally and in Virginia, the same debate that I've been having over the last week with Delegates Toscano and Lopez. So, Mr. Speaker, here are the election results, the facts of the past 8 years. This, again, is how millions of Americans and Virginians have voted after experiencing this dismally slow economy. Since 2008, Mr. Political Market has removed a Democrat and replaced him with a Republican for the presidency and vice presidency of the United States, replaced a 60% Democrat majority in the United States Senate with a 52% Republican majority, replaced a 59% Democrat majority in the House of Representatives with a 55% Republican majority, including a 7-4 or 64% majority in the Virginia delegation, elected 30 Republican governors representing 60% of the states. And, Mr. Speaker, here's one I know we all really care about, and elected Republicans to control 69 out of 99 state legislatures, or 70% of state legislatures. And in Virginia, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Political Market has given us a 66% majority in this House and a 53% majority in the Senate. Mr. Speaker, these elections of the last 8 years are historically off the charts. Millions, Mr. Speaker, of our fellow countrymen and Virginians have clearly, unequivocally spoken via Mr. Political Market electoral process, and they have spoken with no ambiguity. Their loud and clear, historical and unambiguous judgment is that with respect to the most important public policy issue of our times, which is economic growth, they are fed up with the dismally slow economic growth Obama economy in the country and the dismally slow McAuliffe Northern economy in Virginia. And as a direct result, they are electing Republicans in, again, off-the-charts historical numbers to fix the problem. Mr. Speaker, finally, as you are well aware, we have elections in Virginia this year for all 100 seats in this House, for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to working closely and very hard with you and my 65 brethren in the House Republican caucus and our nominees for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general to take this dismally slow economic growth debate to the voters of Virginia. And Mr. Speaker, I think the past 8 years of historical Republican victories are prologue. And as such, I look forward to the continuing debate and the electoral judgment thereon that millions of our fellow Virginians will deliver on November the 7th. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.